After 5 years of marriage, my spouse and I have chosen to delay starting a family until we feel more mature and financially secure, a decision that sets us apart from many of our friends. We've witnessed the complexities of family dynamics firsthand, particularly through my older brother's experiences. He's now on his second marriage, juggling visitations with his children from his previous marriage alongside his new wife's children, and another on the way. While children are a blessing, we've seen how strained relationships can affect them, and we want to ensure we're in a stable place before welcoming them into our lives. My love for my wife knows no bounds, and I am committed to building a future with her. We've shared a strong bond since exchanging vows, and I am willing to do whatever it takes to support her and our relationship. As they say in the movies, she truly completes me. Professionally, I've been working as a laborer in a manufacturing plant for the past 7 years since graduating high school. While I enjoy my work, I aspire to climb the ladder and advance in my career. Wendy completed her 2-year associate degree and secured a position in the secretarial department of the local newspaper office. With both of us working, we were able to indulge in various purchases typical of a young couple. However, much of our spending was facilitated by credit, a decision that would soon come back to haunt us when I received the devastating news of my impending layoff. The sudden loss of my job turned our world upside down. With no children to depend on, my unemployment benefits were meager, leaving us uncertain about our financial future, relying solely on Wendy's income and my diminished earnings. As bills piled up and tensions rose, our once harmonious relationship began to deteriorate. Adding fuel to the fire, I sought solace in alcohol, exacerbating our financial woes and straining our marriage. In the midst of arguments and my self-destructive behavior, we struggled to navigate the challenges we faced. Looking back, it's clear we didn't handle the situation as well as we could have. It was a test of our marriage's strength, a period that would ultimately reveal its resilience. While Wendy diligently went to work, I attempted to contribute by tending to household chores and attending sporadic job interviews. However, opportunities for someone with only a high school education were scarce, and the prospects were often underwhelming in terms of pay and stability. Frustrated and disheartened, I found myself seeking refuge in bars, much to Wendy's dismay, who rightfully urged me to redouble my efforts in finding employment. Despite several advances from women at the bars, I remained steadfast in my commitment to my wife, rejecting their offers as I refused to betray her trust. Witnessing the consequences of infidelity in my brother's life served as a stark reminder of the path I refused to take. However, some nights I returned home reeking of alcohol, a habit that inevitably strained our relationship. After enduring months of this behavior, Wendy lashed out during an argument, labeling me a useless husband. Her words cut deep, piercing through the haze of alcohol and striking a chord within me. Accusations of infidelity followed, further exacerbating the tension between us. I vehemently denied any wrongdoing, explained that while these women approached me, I remained faithful to our marriage vows. Yet, when questioned about using our household funds to purchase drinks for these women, I couldn't bring myself to deceive her. Admitting the truth, I confessed, yes, I bought them drinks, seeking companionship in my loneliness. You rascal. Wendy's voice rang with fury as she confronted me. While I'm out working hard to pay our bills, you squander what little money we have on other women. You stumble home inebriated, expecting sympathy. What about me? Don't you realize I feel lonely too, returning to an empty house while my husband flirts with other women? Get out of my sight, you worthless bastard. Perhaps I'll find a real man, one who won't betray me. With tears streaming down her face, she retreated into the bedroom, her anger palpable. Knowing she was too upset to reason with, I left, seeking refuge at the bar once again. In a haze of alcohol, I surrendered to unconsciousness, only to awaken when the bartender closed up, allowing me to sleep off my intoxication. Unbeknownst to me, the bartender had contacted Wendy, assuring her that I would be taken care of. The following morning, I returned home, but Wendy had already left for work. Desperate to make amends, I attempted to apologize by calling her at her workplace, but she refused to take my call. Later that day, she phoned me, informing me that she might need to work late. Despite my efforts to express remorse, she remained unwilling to listen. Realizing I needed to make amends, I resolved to do something special for Wendy. When my unemployment check arrived, I decided to prioritize our relationship over paying off a credit card bill. Money was tight, but our marriage mattered more. I cleaned up and stopped to pick up a small bouquet of flowers before heading to Wendy's workplace to surprise her with dinner. Knowing she usually finished work at 5, I timed my arrival at the parking garage just after, wanting to give her a moment to herself before our evening together. However, as I drove through the garage, a sinking feeling gripped me when I remembered her mentioning the possibility of working late. Adjusting my plan, I parked and headed towards her office, recalling that she always parked on level 2 for ease of remembering. Spotting her car, I saw her standing beside it, engaged in conversation with a man who held her hands. Wendy seemed preoccupied, her gaze fixed downwards as the man spoke to her, oblivious to my approach. As I pulled up in front of her car, Wendy's startled expression met mine. "Andrew, what are you doing here?" she exclaimed, her voice tinged with surprise. Her hands quickly withdrew from the grasp of the man beside her, whose discomfort was evident as he observed my arrival. Fueled by a mix of confusion and anger, I wrestled with the urge to confront the man who had been holding my wife's hand. My emotions were a jumble, leaving me unsure of how to proceed. "I came to apologize and seek your forgiveness, but it seems you have other plans, like working late," I muttered, my frustration evident. Snatching the bouquet of flowers from beside me, I flung them out of the window in a fit of despair. "Enjoy your damn date," I shouted, the weight of my emotions evident in the tears streaming down my cheeks as I sped away. As I glanced back through the rearview mirror, I saw Wendy standing beside the stranger, and confusion clouded my thoughts. Despite our arguments, the notion of her betrayal hadn't crossed my mind. My initial impulse was to drown my sorrows in alcohol, but my mind was too numb to make any decisions. Instead, I found myself driving aimlessly, entertaining thoughts of steering my car off the road or into an embankment. Tears streamed down my face as I hit what felt like rock bottom, grappling with the reality of my dire situation. No job, no money, and now facing the prospect of being a failed and divorced husband, losing the woman I cherished above all else. Why, God, where did I go wrong? I pleaded inwardly, seeking answers in the midst of my despair. Although I'm not particularly religious, I've always held a belief in God, albeit inconsistently attending church throughout my life. The memory of our wedding day flooded back, the warmth and purity of our vows binding us together in eternity. Wendy and I united forever. That was the promise we made. Lost in my thoughts, I found myself inexplicably drawn to the church where we exchanged our vows 5 years ago. Parking in the lot, I discovered the church door ajar. Without hesitation, I entered and approached the altar, sinking to my knees as tears continued to flow uncontrollably. As I knelt at the altar, I realized there was no need for words. God understood the depths of my heart and the turmoil within. Surrendering to the solace of His presence, I allowed my tears to flow freely, finding comfort in the knowledge that I was not alone. Time seemed to lose its meaning as I basked in the peace that enveloped me, eventually rising to my feet and making my way home, knowing I needed to confront the situation with Wendy, no matter the outcome. Pulling into the driveway, relief washed over me at the sight of Wendy's car parked in front of our home. Before I could even step out of the car, the front door swung open, and Wendy rushed out, tears streaming down her face as she enveloped me in a tight embrace. "I didn't do anything, Andrew. You have to believe me," she cried desperately. "I didn't do anything. Please let me explain. Please, I love you and only you. I was so worried about you. I called everyone, and no one had seen you. I stopped by the bar, and the bartender said you hadn't been there all day. I've been worried sick. Oh God, honey, I was so scared that you wouldn't come back, And let me explain. Where were you? Her words pierced through my confusion, and I found myself compelled to share my journey. I was at the church where we exchanged our wedding vows. I confessed. It's where we promised to have and to hold from that day forward, forsaking all others until death do us part. I was drawn there, perhaps because it's where our souls became one. As we stepped into the house, her grip on my hand remained firm, a silent reassurance amidst the tension that hung in the air. Who was he, and why were you with him? I inquired, my voice betraying a mix of concern and disbelief. His name is Darren, and he works in the same building as the newspaper office, Wendy explained, her tone tinged with frustration. He's been persistently pursuing me for months, but I've always tried to steer clear of his advances. A few days ago, he claimed he saw you at the Beer and Bear bar, engaging intimately with a woman who works there. Naturally, I dismissed it as a fabrication, believing you wouldn't betray me like that. But he insisted he had evidence, photos he took with his cell phone. Wendy continued, recounting the events that led to her meeting Darren in the parking garage after work. After our argument yesterday, I was torn. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I mentioned the possibility of working late as a cover, intending to confront Darren and see these supposed pictures. I wanted to reassure you by sticking to my usual routine while also addressing my doubts. When you arrived, he had just shown me 2 photos of you with a woman from Beer and Bear, her arm draped around you. I was so consumed by thoughts of those pictures that I didn't even realize he had taken hold of my hands. Wendy began, her voice softening as she recounted the events. You were yelling, and you threw the flowers out the window. By the way, I retrieved them and put them in a vase. They're stunning, but the sentiment behind them meant the world to me. Before I could explain, you drove off. Andrew, I love you more than anything, and I would never betray you. I could never bring myself to cheat on you. When you left, I confronted Darren, calling him every name in the book and warning him to stay away from me. It's you, honey. It's always been you. I regret the hurtful things I said during our argument. Her words resonated with me, and I felt a warmth enveloping my heart as she spoke. It was as if God had answered my silent prayer. I love you too, Wendy, I replied, my voice filled with sincerity. I always have, and I always will. As for Gina, Wendy interjected, no need to explain, a hint of sadness in her tone. When I went looking for you, Gina told me how she tried to comfort you after you left. She praised you as a devoted husband, even though she mentioned your tendency to drink too much. She also revealed Darren's true intentions, how he targets husbands to approach their wives. I believe the bartender will take action to prevent him from causing further trouble. Together, we embraced the newfound understanding and renewed trust in our relationship, grateful for the love that bound us together. Epilogue. I shifted my focus away from self-pity and actively pursued job opportunities. Wendy and I continued to meet for lunch without any interference from Darren, though I secretly hoped for a chance encounter with him. Unfortunately, his office informed me that he had transferred to another branch, denying me the opportunity for closure. About 2 weeks later, my employer offered me my job back, providing a much-needed relief as we caught up on our bills. With a newfound sense of responsibility, we vowed to be more prudent in our future spending, especially now that we were planning to start a family. Wendy stopped taking the pill, and the prospect of becoming a father in 7 months filled me with joy and anticipation. We learned from our past mistakes, committing to open communication and avoiding assumptions. We refused to tempt fate with any more close calls. Whether our child is named Kevin or Isabella, we are confident they will have the most loving parents in the world. Our hearts are full of love, ready to share with our growing family. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.